Okay, we're back on, and we were talking about Walt Disney, and I know there's a story about you and Mr. Disney that you may want to tell about on set.
Well, Mr. Disney, as I said, used to come on the set a lot and would watch us shoot. And he'd usually stay in the background. And sometimes we'd see him, sometimes we didn't, or we'd hear he was there and we really didn't see him. As I said earlier, I think I used to do a lot of the voiceovers where they'd do a newsreel and I'd come up on camera and we'd be talking about the FBI and I'd maybe have handcuffs in my hand and or talking about what the FBI does. I'm just using that as an example because I talked about a lot of subjects on the newsreels. But usually the ins and outs were maybe a 2-minute intro, which is a lot of time to be on camera, and I'd be doing it in teleprompter. They'd have a teleprompter right over the lens, and I'd be talking right to the lens and talking about the history of the FBI or whatever I was talking about. And I got out of the corner of my eye, I saw Mr. Disney right next to camera. And here's 2 minutes of dialogue, and I kept blowing the end of the line because Mr. Disney was sort of making me a little nervous. Because I'd see him there, and he'd be standing there just smiling at me, watching what I was doing. So I called the AD over after one of the takes that I had blown and said, could you ask Mr. Disney if he could just please move out of my eye line because he's sort of making me a little nervous and that's why I'm blowing my lines. And I didn't want to be disrespectful to him, but could he just move just a little? Because I'm very cognizant of eye lines, especially being as an actor, where I'd see somebody moving or in my eye line and it's sort of distracting. So that's what was happening to me. And I saw the AD go over to Mr. Disney and whisper in his ear, and he went, "Oh." And he looked at me and waved and went like that to me. So he left. He ended up leaving. I got through the intro and got finished. The next day in the trades, Mouseketeer throws Walt Disney off the set. And the people at the studio brought this to me, and of course they're laughing. And I thought, oh my God, my job is done. I'm going to be fired. Because it wasn't anything, I didn't throw him off the set, but some wise guy at the studio got the story and called it in. And so they thought it would be really fun to say Mouseketeer throws Walt Disney off the set. And nothing ever happened of it, but it was just one of those funny things that happened with Mr. Disney. That's really about the only time I had any real contact with Mr. Disney, except for seeing him on the sets or him saying hi or everything. But I thought my career was over at the time, but as it turned out, it wasn't.
Was that the biggest press that you had gotten to that point?
Yeah, I think about then, yeah. I really didn't, we got press all the time. Wherever we went, we were on tour a lot with Disney, where we would get all kinds of press. We had bodyguards, we had press people with us. Anytime we went outside of the studio, we had people with us sort of protecting our interests. Or when we thought they were protecting our interests, they were really protecting Disney's interests. As it turned out, we knew, we thought they were there for us, but they were watching out for the studio too. But there's always press about us. And they were always looking for stories. They wanted to hear the dirty stories that happened at the studio. There was really no bad things that happened at the studio. I'll have people come trying to get little blurbs from me now of what really went on with you kids. What's some of the bad stories as show kids. And there really wasn't any. Nothing really happened with us that was really of note, of what a person would want to get a hold of for the tabloids. We were show kids, yes, but we never got in trouble. We were very lucky, I guess, especially because I grew up during the drug age, where everybody got in trouble, or a lot of my friends either were in jail or dead. Through the years of just they went the wrong way. So I was very lucky, and all of us from the Mickey Mouse Club, I think, were very lucky. In many, many ways, for the most part, none of us really had that kind of life where we were getting ourselves into trouble and having bad publicity. But we did have, we always had people looking over our shoulder as kids. And I think that was very helpful to us growing up in a way because maybe it kept us from getting in trouble or creating things that would be noteworthy that maybe we didn't want to be noteworthy.
Do you think that the Tommy Cole persona that people saw on television was really you? I mean, was there
Yeah. Yeah, I think I am what I am. I never was disrespectful to my parents. I believed in a higher being. I, just was a normal kid growing up. I had friends like everyone, the neighbor kids, and we palled around, and I went to parties, and I went to school, I went to college for a little while. I didn't finish college. I now regret that. I wish I had. But I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be an entertainer, so I didn't feel that college would help me. As a matter of fact, it would have been helpful, I think, in the communication that I have with people now, to maybe communicate a little better, to have a little more college education. But I don't feel that I'm at a deficit because I didn't finish college. I wish I had. My kids finished, thank goodness. I got them. I said, don't do as I do as I say. You are going to finish college. So I got my kids finished college, which I'm very happy for them. But publicity, I am what I am. I am what I am today. And I think I am what I am today because of how I grew up, because of what went on in my background. I think I've been able to be a certain amount of success in what I've done as an adult because of what I did as a kid.
Okay. You had mentioned touring. What were some of the places that you went to?
As a Mouseketeer?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll talk about Mouseketeer first. As a Mouseketeer, we toured in the United States. I think I talked about the Chicago trip where we went and did publicity for Disney movies. And some other movies, too. We'd go to different places. But Annette, Doreen, Jimmy Dodd, and I were picked to tour New England states during the winter. When we weren't shooting, we toured. We went on a bus tour. And we would go to a city, let's say in Pennsylvania, wherever, in Philadelphia. We would do maybe 12 stops during the day. We'd go to maybe two schools, and I would perform with Doreen and Annette, Jimmy playing guitar, and I sang a Sinatra tune, a love song. Here I am at 14, 15, 16 years old singing a love song when these teenage girls are going, ah! It was great. I loved it. And now I look back on it, kind of sophomoric of me at 14, 15, 16 singing a Sinatra song. Maybe as an adult it would have worked, but as a kid it was kind of funny. But the kids seemed to enjoy it. Jimmy would play his little 4-string guitar. It was like a uke, but it was really a guitar, bigger than a ukulele. And he played it very well. And it was called the mouse guitar. And they had a Mickey image. And then Doreen would sing and dance, and Annette would get out and sing, and then we'd do a little number together. And we did this at schools all over New England. We'd meet the mayor at lunchtime. We had police escort every place we went. We'd maybe do as much as 12 stops during the day, and then we'd collapse at night. And then we'd hit the bus the next day and do another city. We did this for a couple months. We did this a couple times, and it was wonderful. I remember the Annette series was going to come on. This was a serial that we had on the Mickey Mouse Club called the Annette series, where it was just about teenage kids or growing up in a small town. And I happened to have a part in it. And of course, Annette was the star of it. Doreen had a part in it. And we wanted to see that show, and it was premiering while we were on tour. It's snowing. We're in our bus, and we said, we're not going to be able to see the show because we were still on the bus traveling. Our bus driver said, leave it to me. He stopped in this little town where he found a house with a TV antenna. Here it's snowing, but there were bikes on the porch, so they knew they had kids. He went up to the door and knocked on the door and said, excuse me, I have the original Mouseketeers out here, Annette, Doreen, and Tommy, and Jimmy Dodd. Can we come in and watch the Mickey Mouse Club? Is your TV working? And these people are like this and at the doorway, and they said, yeah, come on in. Before we knew it, we had everyone within 2 blocks were at that house, and we watched the Mickey Mouse Club that night, and it made the press too. The next day, it was Mouseketeers visit so and such a town, but those kind of things happened to us all the time on tours. We just little quirky things that would go on while we were on tour. Back east, we did it a couple times, and then the show is off the air. Let's cut fast to 1959. The show's off the air, and we're asked to go to Australia. The show is #1 in Australia. It's off the air here in LA. So a bunch of us went to Australia, and we go to Australia at the airport. 24,000 people met us at the airport, more than they had done for the Queen of England. And they had a little float that took us from the airport to downtown Sydney, and people lined the street all the way from the airport to downtown Sydney. And we would wave, just like being in a parade, different parts of going in. I forget how long it took us to get there. And Doreen, who then is 17, 18 years old, we're all, see, the show is #1 on the air down there, but we're all 13, 12, 13, 14 years old. It's the first year's show. And here these kids from LA are coming. I'm 18. Doreen's 17. Bobby's 18. I think Cubby was 14. Karen was there too, and I think Cheryl. Now Cheryl's beautiful blonde. So all these young adults come off the plane. And Doreen is quite buxom. Beautiful girl, redhead. She was on the cover of the front page of the Australian newspaper in Sydney for 3 days. Redheaded bombshell from LA, Mouseketeer, Doreen. And so we had a renaissance. We had this, here we're off the air in LA, but we're stars all over again in Australia. So we did this show, we filled stadiums. They had boxing stadiums in the round we performed in. And then we went to Melbourne, and we went to Adelaide and to Perth, and went all over Australia touring. And we're brand new stars again. And I always laugh at it because I made 3 trips to Australia, 2 as a Mouseketeer, and 1 where I was on the bill. It was a Jimmy Rogers tour, a singer. Jimmy Rogers, Dodie Stevens back then was a big singer, and the Champs, Tequila, did the instrumental of Tequila, and I performed with them too. And I couldn't buy a job for a while in LA after the Mouseketeers folded, but I was a star in Australia. I was a personality. I always hate the word star. I was a personality in Australia. My only mistake was whether it's a mistake or not, but at the time, I got homesick. I should have stayed over there because I could have worked, I had a whole other career in Australia. But who knows? If I had stayed there, maybe the things that happened to me and where I am today would have never happened. So those are some of the tours that we went on, wonderful tours. Tours with the Mouseketeers were always, to me, the most special because we were treated like kings and queens, and it was a lot of fun. Great growing up because here I'm a young adult in Australia, and where you're on, as it turned out, I was on covers of magazines and What's Tommy's New Love Now and things like that, which I never really had that as a Mouseketeer, but I was having it as a young adult now. So it was a whole different experience. It was a lot of fun, a lot of fun growing up. I have no regrets whatsoever. I'm not one of those show kids that had a terrible life. I had a wonderful life. I've had a great, if it were all to end now, I'd say what a ride. It was great.
Now you mentioned that the show went off the air in 1959.
Correct.
How did you find out it was going off the air?
Excuse me just a sec.
Actually, let's cut camera, please. Okay.
Your question again?
The show went off the air in 1959. How did you find out about that?
We really found out, it's like the old story, the old show business story, you don't read about you being canceled on a show till you read it in the script that you've died. Sort of the same way on the Mickey Mouse Club. We heard on the set that we were canceled. And as it turned out, we were doing one of our end tabloids where they'd used to pan on us, where we were singing, "Now it's time to say goodbye to all our company," or all our family, I guess it was. And they would pan very slowly on us. We heard just before that, oops, you guys are canceled. So all of us are going, oh boy, it's over. So they're panning on us like this, and tears. I don't remember if I was crying, but I was sad. But some of the girls, tears are going down their cheeks. And they had to cut, and they had to have all of us compose ourselves. Come on, you're professionals, you've had a great run. Let's do it again. And we finally got through it. But that's how we found out. They told us on the set.
Did you have any inkling it was about to happen?
No, because I hear that the canceling of the show I heard was all political between Walt Disney and ABC. And there was some politics involved from the two shows, I think Disneyland at the time that was on the air, and then the Mickey Mouse Club. And Disney wanted to keep Disneyland going because it was promoting Disneyland itself. And the Mickey Mouse Club had already fulfilled what he wanted it to do. And so they decided to keep Disneyland going and cancel the Mickey Mouse Club, even though the Mickey Mouse Club was, I believe, in the top 20 when we were canceled, which was unheard of really in that time. If something was really doing well, you don't cancel it. So we probably could have gone on for a couple more years, but we were getting older too. I mean, they would have had to bring fresh new kids in anyway, and probably we would have lost our jobs the next year anyway. So, I mean, after the fact, we thought about that and said probably would have happened anyway. But what a run. We had a great time. I mean, to be on a hit show as a kid was part of my upbringing, and I think made me what I am today.
How many times do you think that you sang the theme song to Mickey Mouse Club?
Thousands of times. We still do. I mean, I still do. I'll speak at conventions. I'll be a keynote speaker or co-keynote speaker or be a personality at a convention. And I'll get the whole audience to sing the alma mater. And they do. They all know it. Now it's time to say goodbye. They all sing it. And with big smiles on their faces. Because it was part of a lot of people's childhood in that I'd do shows at Disneyland all through the years or wherever as a Mouseketeer, even as an adult. I'd be in an elevator someplace and somebody would look at me and they'd say, "Thank you." Excuse me? No, I want to thank you for my upbringing or for being a good babysitter, because our show babysat a lot of kids. And it was on originally 4 years on network. Then it went to syndication, and it was on for almost 40 years in syndication, off and on cable. And so different generations saw our show. Not just kids when I was my age, but then kids that weren't even born yet when we were doing the show saw the show, which was to them first run. So it'd be a whole new generation would see the original Mouseketeers. Even though the new Mouseketeers came in, the new Mouseketeers and the Britney Spears and all the kids, a whole different animal of Mouseketeer, they still remember the original Mouseketeers. And a lot of generations remember it. So to this day, a lot of people still want to hear about it. They want to hear the story. And that's why I'm asked to come to conventions sometimes and just speak, or get up on stage and just sing the Mickey Mouse Club March or sing the alma mater, because people remember. So probably thousands of times I've sung that song. And I hope at my funeral they'll have the Mickey Mouse Club March being sung and the alma mater being sung. It'd be kind of neat.
What has been your involvement in the new Mickey Mouse Clubs?
The only involvement we had with the new Mickey Mouse Club is that Annette, Bobby, Lonnie, I think Lonnie was there. Don Grady, Sherry Alberoni, and myself. We performed back in 1989, I think it was, in Florida with the New Mouseketeers. Now, this is not the Britney Spears yet group. This is pre-Britney and a few of those kids. And it was called the MMC. They didn't want to say it was the Mickey Mouse Club. It was the MMC. They're cool. Disney they wanted to get away from anything Mickey Mouse Club. So they were cool, MMC. So we performed with them. We did a couple dance numbers, and we came on the set, and they all applauded us, and we sang together, and we danced together. And that's really the only, and we had a lot of fun. They were great kids. Those some of the very, very talented kids on the New Mouseketeers. But that show had a whole different avenue. Didn't follow whatever we did. Disney at that time did not want to emulate us. They wanted a whole new upgrade of the show, and which, as it turned out, didn't turn out as well as what we did, because we were, I guess, it was a special show, a special time when the Mickey Mouse Club was on in the 50s. There'll never be a time like that again. You left your door open, you left your key in your car, there were no drugs that were out, that was all in the closet. You respected your police officer, you respected your politician, your legislators, they were all, you said yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am. It was a whole different era. There'll never be an era like that again. And I think because of that, the Mickey Mouse Club back then, respect your father, believe in God. It was all part of the show. And that type of show, I don't think it would ever go again. And I don't think that's why they probably wanted to get away from the old show in the new show. But we did have a certain amount of, fun with the new kids. That's the only time we performed with them, except now I take that back. Few of the kids, I think 6 of the kids from the New Mouseketeers joined us at Disneyland on stage. And we had a whole stage show one year at Disneyland. This was in the 80s. And I can't remember some of the kids' names. I wish I could now, so I'd have it on the tape here, but I can't remember their names now. But nice kids, and they were great to work with, very talented also. So that was the only time we really worked with the New Mouseketeers.
And talk about your reunions with your crew of Mouseketeers. You just mentioned in the 80s, the stage show.
Oh, the reunions that we had with the originals, which added also Sherry. I mentioned Sherry Alberoni. Sherry came in the second year. So did Don Grady. Came in the second year. Don Grady from My Three Sons. I mean, we had some kids who went from the Mickey Mouse Club to TV stardom, like Don Grady. Paul Peterson was first year. He left the show very shortly in the first year, and was on the Donna Reed show. And had a great success on that show. And Johnny Crawford, the rifleman, he was a Mouseketeer also. So we had some kids who left that show and did some things, and they would come and perform with us sometimes when we would do our shows at Disneyland or if we did conventions. So during the 80s, we did reunion shows at Disneyland. And I was in a whole different field then during the 80s. I was a makeup artist in the studios doing television and motion pictures. So I'd have to find time in order to get down for rehearsals. And in fact, I was doing Raquel Welch in a movie, and she wanted me to do something with her, and I'm at Disneyland talking to her and saying, I can't do it. What are you doing at Disneyland? Well, I'm performing. I said, well, I need you up here. Well, I'll be up there next week, but I can't come. So I'd be performing while I'm trying to make a living as a makeup artist. And we would do these reunion shows where we would just pack them in. People would come, thank God, to see us because they remembered us as kids and they wanted to relive their childhood a little bit, and we would do that on stage. We would come out and do our show. One year we did the days of the week, where the days of the week were Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Monday being, now I can't even remember now, but I had a talent roundup. There was talent roundup day, anything can happen day, guest star day, circus day, and I'm at a loss for the 5th day, but doesn't matter. And we did this on stage. And you'd see tears in people's eyes. Here's these people that maybe are 40, 50, 60 years old in the audience reliving their past. And we would do these reunion shows. We'd do 4 shows a day down at Disneyland. And I'm in my 40s doing that, which was really fun. Exhausting, but fun. And luckily, most of us have stayed pretty fit through the years where we could still dance, because we did a lot of dancing at Disneyland. And I got to sing on stage, which I love to do. I'm a ham on stage anyway. And we would do all these reunion shows, and we'll do reunions at conventions, where we'll sign autographs at conventions and then speak at the convention and sing the song, like I said, the alma mater. We'll get up, and at the end of the convention, usually that's part of our job, is to sing the alma mater. Everybody sings the alma mater to the show. Now it's time to say goodbye to all our family. We did shows at the Hollywood Bowl. We would be the opening act. This is in the 80s. Opening act and closing act for the 4th of July extravaganza. Usually about 3 days we would be at the Hollywood Bowl. And I love playing the Hollywood Bowl. We played the Hollywood Bowl during the 50s. We did an extravaganza there. It was my first time I ever performed there. And I always wanted to play there, so it was always fun to sort of sing and dance with a symphony orchestra behind us, which was kind of fun too. And I looked forward. I always liked the Greek theater too, and I was able to perform there. But that was a whole different time in my life that I did that. But the shows that I did with the Mouseketeers, to this day, will sort of live in my brain as being a wonderful part of my life, which I was very lucky to have, and a lot of kids didn't have that kind of experience, and I'm very happy it was there for me.
Now, you said you had mentioned that once the show went off the air that you had some trouble kind of transitioning to your next move. Talk about what you did after the show went off the air.
After the show, here I am, 18. I'm not a kid anymore. I'm a young adult. I still looked young, though. I still hadn't grown into my age yet. At 18, I probably looked 14. Even when I was on the Mickey Mouse Club, people thought I was younger, even though I was one of the oldest kids. Because I was sort of blondish, light brown hair, not very tall, and just looked younger. So I could play bit parts as a young kid. So I went out on interviews as a young actor. And which I did. I got bit parts in different shows. I even worked on My Three Sons. I used to go down and visit Don Grady, like I said, was a Mouseketeer also. But my mother worked on the show as the guardian for Don Grady and all the kids on the show before they turned 18. And she was the guardian for those kids until, or all the kids on the show as they were growing up. For 13 years she was on that show until it was canceled. I used to go down and visit Don, and the director took a liking to me for some reason and put me in the show a couple times. Just bit parts. I think I was always getting somebody in trouble. I was always sort of this little juvenile delinquent. I worked on the Beeve, Leave It to Beaver, and I stole the Beeve's boat or something like that. And my hair was longer, and I had like what they called back then an eagle beak, where it came in, and I had a duck tail, and so I was always playing this little juvenile delinquent. Never got any big parts, always sort of bit parts. I'd go out on dancing interviews during that time, 18, 19, 20 years old. And I don't remember ever really getting a part as a dancer because I wasn't that good a dancer, which you had to be. I was okay as a dancer, especially as a Mouseketeer. I was able to, like I said, I think earlier, I was able to fake it, where I looked like I knew what I was doing and making the moves. But I never really got a part as a dancer, and because you had to, in the auditions, you would have the choreographer give you some easy steps, and you'd do it a little while, then make it a little faster and a little faster and a little faster, until you're full speed ahead as a dancer. And I wasn't that fast to study, even though I could have gotten the steps if I would have been able. If I had my wife with me, who was a wonderful dancer. She was sort of my choreographer on all the shows that I'd go on when I had to learn dancing. She'd learn the dance, and then she'd help me with it at home to get the steps right. So if I'd had Aileen with me, it would have been great. But I didn't at that time. I wasn't married at the time. So I never really got any parts as a dancer after the Mickey Mouse Club. But I did get parts as singers. as a singer. And I started making a living as a singer. I joined a touring troupe with Teen Magazine at the time, which was a big teenage magazine here in Hollywood. And I was hired to go on tour with Teen Magazine and Janssen Sportswear. And we toured half the United States, just like a Dick Clark show. We'd put on shows in conjunction with doing a fashion show with Janssen. We ran into the Dick Clark show on tour once, and they were on tour also. I forgot to say, there's one thing, I did meet, one of the tours I did with the Mouseketeers with Annette, when we were in Philadelphia, we were guests on American Bandstand, which was really a hoot back then for us, because Annette had a hit song out, I think, called, I can't remember now. Tall Paul, or was that Shelley for Bray? I can't remember now, but she had a hit song out. And they had her on, and they had us come on, and we all signed autographs to all the kids on American Bandstand. And one of the kids that I had met on American Bandstand, she and I toured as part of the Teen Magazine, Pat Molitari, who's since passed away. Pat and I used to do dance exhibitions along with the Teen Magazine show, and she'd be with us on shows. But the tours that I did after the Mouseketeers was basically as a singer. And so I started singing in clubs around town. I joined a nightclub act called the Idrisi Brothers. I grew up with two brothers called the Idrisis. One of them was in high school with me. They had a great act. It was a comedy singing team. And they had a hit song called Cherry Stone, and later years they wrote Never My Love and some beautiful songs as songwriters. But back then, they had a nightclub act, and one of the brothers was drafted at the time. And in order to keep the show going, they needed another Idrisi brother. Now, this is an Italian family, dark hair, curly hair, and here's this blonde kid who's sort of bronzy, who always had a tan. I called myself the illegitimate Idrisi brother. And we started performing, and I took the Brothers Act, which was a comedy singing act, where I was the brunt of all the jokes. And Dick Idrisi, my partner on the show, for a joke, he'd always push my head into the microphone while I'm singing. He chipped my teeth all the way across for a joke. I finally had to have all these fixed. But for 2 years, I toured on playing clubs in Nevada and California, 6 shows a night, 6 nights a week. 45 on, 15 off. I didn't know that was hard work. It was.
Now, did you use your previous celebrity? Did people know you were Tommy Cole, the Mouseketeer? Or
sometimes it would be announced. Sometimes it did open doors for me, but not too much. I never brought it up myself. I felt it wasn't for me to bring it up. If somebody brought up the Mouseketeers, I'd be glad to talk about it. But I didn't want to be tooting my own horn. If somebody brought it up, it was always a conversation piece. And then I'd talk about it. And I was proud of it, for one. I really was. It was part of my childhood. I had a wonderful time. I wasn't one of those, quote, show kids that got in trouble because I was a show kid. I had a wonderful life. So if somebody talked about it, I would. And it did open some doors. On the show, when I was performing someplace, or if we did a interview as a singer, if I did an interview as a singer, usually someone else would bring it up and then I would talk about it. And so it was a nice conversation piece. Most people, they'd get a biography, they would see that I was a Mouseketeer, and so they would bring it up because they were interested. Later in years, it really held me in good stead and opened doors for me in another career. But as a singer, it didn't really do that much good for me, except they'd still want to know about Annette, which is okay. And I'd talk about Annette and all the relationships we had as Mouseketeers and how much fun it was. So it was a good conversation piece.
Well, you keep mentioning this other career, so I'd like to talk about your transition into that career.
I talked about going on My Three Sons, and I worked as an actor in My Three Sons, and I used to go down and visit Don Grady and visit my mom, who was, like I said, the guardian for the kids on the show. Makeup artist down there we became friends because I was down there a lot. And he started showing me little tricks because I was always interested in makeup, in the special effects part of makeup. Bullet hits, cuts and bruises and blood and gore and all that kind of stuff. I was always interested in that. So he started showing me things. And he said, if you ever get interested, if you ever want to change careers, I'll help you become a makeup artist. And I didn't think much about it at the time. But within a year or so after him saying that, I realized that I didn't really want to, I was singing in clubs. I realized I didn't want to be an old singer in clubs, which I probably would still be in clubs singing somewhere because I love to sing. Voice probably, sing Melancholy Baby, people in clubs. I didn't want that to happen to me. So I said, maybe I should look for something behind the camera. And he said, attributes of being a makeup artist. Hands are clean, don't have to get all kinds of grease and dirt on your hands by pulling cable, like a lot of people do if you're a grip or working camera or working lighting. You're one of the highest paid people on the set at the time. That has changed through the years, but at the time, the makeup artists and hairstylists were quite highly paid, and you're also, back then, this is in the 60s, early 60s, makeup artists at times were called above-the-line employees. They had credits at the start of the credits, not at the end. That ended quite a while ago there, too. But at the time, that's what was happening with makeup and hair, so it was quite a good job to have. And you're artistic, and I liked being around pretty women, so that gave me a chance to be around pretty women. I think, yeah, that's kind of neat, get pretty women in a makeup chair. So he started showing me things, and I started practicing, and there was a stand-in on the show named Bobby Osterman, who to this day is one of my best friends. He and I used to start practicing on each other in his spare time when he wasn't standing in for Tim Considine on the show. We'd do cuts and bruises. In fact, he'd go back to work in front of the camera to stand when the lighting director or the camera person is lighting. The stand-in would stand there, and while they're lighting, he'd have a cut and blood coming down one side of his face or a bullet hit here because we'd been practicing. Long story short, I finally decided, after coming back from a tour, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but as a backup singer, I was tired of being on the road, and I said, I think maybe I'm going to try it, become a makeup artist. This is the mid-60s. So I started knocking on doors, and I faked my way into doing a makeup over at ABC for a gentleman named Rudy Horvatich, who was the department head at ABC. And at the time I was going with a young actress, and I did her makeup for him. And he said, oh, good job, okay, all right, I'll keep you in mind. Well, I kept bugging him for a job, and I had hit all the studios. I had this makeup artist from My Three Sons had gotten me in for at least so I could see, because it's very hard to get any kind of an interview with department heads of studios in the makeup department, but he was able to get me into these people, and they took my name down, but I wasn't union or anything, so it was going to be a long road. ABC, I didn't have to be union at the time to start working at ABC, so I kept going and bugging the department head for work. And he said, like patting me on the head, okay, kid, we'll let you, if something comes up. But I kept bugging him, and I happened to be sitting in his office one day. He got a phone call. His regular makeup artist on one of the shows was in an automobile accident, wasn't going to be able to work for a week. And he looked at me and said, you got your kit with you? And I said, yep. Okay, you go to work on the dating game tonight. And I never stopped work since. I spent 2.5 years at ABC, where I worked on Dating Game and Newlywed Game, Lawrence Welk Show and General Hospital. And then I was asked to go on staff over at NBC. And I stayed in live television, or in network television, for a little over 10 years. I spent almost 7 years at NBC, and then in the 70s, mid-70s, I went out and got my journeyman card and started working features. And as I say, I've really never been out of work. I was very, very lucky as a makeup artist. I'd go from one job to the other. I started working on sitcoms in the mid-'70s, and I made a career out of being a department head on 32 sitcoms through the years. Some of them I was on for 7, 8 years at a time. I'd overlap. I did 3 sitcoms a week for a couple years. I'd do a Monday, Tuesday show, I'd do a Wednesday, Thursday show, and I'd do a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday show. I'd overlap, but I didn't have to be there. I still get paid for it, but I didn't have to be there, so I was in hog heaven. They used to call me the sitcom king, and I still have that nickname in the business as the sitcom king as a makeup artist, because I worked more sitcoms than any makeup artist in town ever. I was just very, very lucky. And I've made I still have some very good, wonderful friends from the sitcom days, as people like Steven Weber from Wings. I was in everything he did, even because I was with him for 8 years, and then was with him for years on after the show was canceled, after Wings was canceled. He'd have me in everything he did. Jean Smart from Designing Women, very loyal. Annie Potts got me the job on Designing Women. I did a movie with her called Pretty in Pink, which we became fast friends because I was the department head on that movie, and she got me the job on Designing Women. I always believe work begets work. The more you work, because the advice I give as a teacher, because I teach makeup and I teach ethics on the set, I teach how to be a makeup artist, how to be a good makeup artist, how to work in the industry. And I always teach people, you never turn a job down, because you don't know that job that maybe didn't pay very much will lead to another job. And that job leads to another job. And before you know it, you're so busy, you're giving jobs away. A little different now. This business has changed, and it's a little tougher out there now because here in Hollywood, because of the strikes we've had lately and the problems we've had this year. Of course, this archive's going to go on forever, and then we'll know what I'm talking about. So, but I've been very, very fortunate as a makeup artist. I spent 40 years as a makeup artist, and then went to another career, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. I went from television to motion pictures, back to television, and I really integrated motion pictures, big motion pictures, some of them, with specials. I used to do all the Dick Clark shows that he did, all the award shows. I was part of that circle of makeup artists and hairstylists.
Now, how would that work, say, for an award show? If you're part of the circle, how did that work?
Well, let's say it's the Emmys. Let's just use the Emmys but I don't think Dick did those, but we'll use it anyway, because I used to work the Emmys. Production company will call the department head. Now, I wasn't the department head on the Emmys. I was the department head on the Oscars once, but not the Emmys. Person who's department head calls his or her crew that he or she likes to work with. Book us. It's one day. Maybe sometimes 2 days. Sometimes you'll do a show before the prep day. You'll come in and shoot a pre-shoot or something, and then you come in and work the show. And so there's a couple days work. You work enough of those, though. I probably work maybe a dozen shows a year as a makeup artist, just being part of that crew. We'd go down to the shrine and schlep all your equipment up and down the stairs and make up the different dancers, make up the stars that are on the show. But it was a circle of people that everybody used over and over and over again. It's changed a little bit now because there's a lot of us that were working those aren't working those anymore. They've gotten a whole new crew in, and they hire different people. Because usually when you're a department head, like any show, whether it's an award show or a movie, I always hired people that I could trust. I'd hire my friends who I knew would do a good job, and people that I trusted that wouldn't stab me in the back, and they were on time, and they knew how to act on a set. So there's a lot of prerequisites to people that I would hire. And the same thing that people would hire me. They knew that I wasn't going to come in and stir the pot, and I was just going to do the job. I was fast as a makeup artist, because in those kinds of shows, you can't putter around. You just can't play around with the makeup. You got to get them in, get them out, because they're needed on the set or on the stage.
Now, how would it be divvied up as to which makeup artist got which talent?
Sometimes it would be divvied up on purpose for certain reasons, but usually first come, first serve. You have a chair open, whoever comes in the door you get. Could be a big star, could be just a dancer, could be a model. Don't know. So it would just, right over here, ma'am, or right over here, sir. Have a seat.
Were there times when the talent would say, no, I want him?
Yes, sometimes. Sometimes they had sat in my chair before. They said, well, I'll wait for Tommy. Or sometimes, for whatever reason, they didn't want me. They maybe want somebody else. We never took it personal anyway. We were just trying to get the job done. Everybody on these shows were pretty darn good at what they did. So there was no jealousies or nobody got their feelings hurt because someone wouldn't sit in their chair. I can remember I was always a good beauty guy, even though I made a living as a beauty artist. But most of my accolades, pats on the back, or awards were for old age or prosthetics, but I made a living doing beautiful women. Thank goodness, because I love working around beautiful women. And my wife doesn't mind, so that's okay. It's just that the people would come in the door, you just sit them down. Doesn't matter. And if they're pretty ladies, I would love to do that because I love high fashion. I used to do a lot of high fashion. When we were doing dancers, when I was staff at NBC, I used to do all the variety shows. Dean Martin show, Jerry Lewis show, all the shows that NBC did back at that time, where there were dancers. And we'd have dancers lined up behind our chairs because they knew that we knew how to do fashion and make them look. Even though dancers, you'd never see them close up. You'd always see them 20 miles back from the camera, but they still wanted to look nice. And so we'd have them lined up behind, there's about 3 or 4 of us that were on staff over there at NBC. The girls would just be lined up wanting to get, look pretty. And so that's what I did. I made them look pretty.
What kind of products did you use? Particularly if you were going to do the Emmys or whatnot, what did you carry with you?
Makeup case, what I call a ditty bag that would have Kleenex, puffs, rubber, all the things that you need for the tools of your trade. The makeup case would have brushes, all kinds of makeup bases, because I used all kinds of different products, from Factor to all store-bought, expensive store-bought makeups. And there are some professional makeups also that I would use. I kept a little of everything. You never knew what they were going to ask for. Now, back a lot of times when we were working in the 70s and 80s, a lot of sparkle eyes, a lot of pretty eyes, a lot of lashes. Makeup has gone through from very plain to very gaudy, back to very plain through the years. So I carried everything. I carried my own lights. I'd carry my lights, my own filters. I'd even carry a C-stand, which is a stand like you put up. In fact, this is a C-stand right next to me that the microphone is connected to, where I'd carry that in the car so that I could hook my lights up, because I'd always carry clip-ons with me with filters and with the correct light bulbs. And I studied camera. In fact, when I traveled with Raquel Welch as her makeup artist, I was with her for 8 years. I'd help light her. And I'd carry filters. I'd carry Mitchell filters for the camera with me. She'd buy them. Of course, I wouldn't buy them because they're expensive, but I'd have them when we did a movie once. We were doing tests, and I'd hand the different filters to the DP, the camera person. I had to ride the camera on one movie before every shot to okay the shots before she'd shoot. That kind of responsibility I don't want ever again. But I got along well with the camera people. Some people might be intimidated about that, but sometimes actresses want you to look through the lens, want you to okay the lighting. Even though I'm not a lighting person, I let the camera person do that. But at times I would just tell the camera person, let's play the game. I'm not the enemy. She just requires me to do this, but you're the boss. And I'd let him or her, because we had some female camera people too, do the job. But part of the time, a makeup artist had to be a lighting director also, and that's what I would do.
In the 70s and 80s, were there specific things that you had to do makeup-wise to suit the cameras?
Well, back then, and of course, now we're dealing with high def, which is very critical. In the last 4 shows that I did, productions that I did before I stopped doing makeup, were all high def. I didn't do anything different. I just did it less. In that, if you have a line on the face and it's not blended, you're going to see that line in high def. You're going to see it. It's going to jump out at you. If you blend it, if everything is blended, there's no hard lines, usually you can get away with that makeup. Because I did a lot of what is called corrective makeup as a makeup artist, and where it's highlight and shadow. And that highlight and shadow held me in good stead when I was doing old age, too. If I was doing old age and character, it's all highlight and shadow. And when you're doing prosthetics, same thing. When you color to make it come alive, it's highlight and shadow. But in high def, you have to be so careful that everything is blended. So high def now is the in thing, and it's going to stay quite a while. A blemish shows, if you more makeup you put on a blemish, the more it's going to show. So you have to sort of try and subdue it in a very subtle way. The same way with makeup now, subdue it in a very subtle way. Back then, it was more hard highlight and shadow where you'd really sculpt the face. And that's what I was known for, and I would sculpt the face. That's what I used to do with Barbara Walters when I was traveling with her. I traveled with Barbara for 4 years. I would sculpt the face. And there was a makeup artist in New York called Way Bandy, did high fashion makeups for models. And I'd do some of the same clients that he would do out here. He was well known for his sculpting the face also, highlight and shadow. Back then, we were all doing that kind of makeup. It's a little heavier makeup than we would do now. And we were able to get away with it. Quick story on Barbara Walters, just this is sort of a show business story. I was doing Barbara, like I said, for 4 years, and this is really, it's sort of a typical showbiz story, and I talk about at times that the business can be a little cruel, but you have to sort of take it with a grain of salt and sort of laugh about it and move on. When Way Bandy did Barbara at one time, I couldn't be there it was a Dolly Parton shoot in Texas, I think it was. And I was performing at Disneyland at the time. Again, I couldn't do her, so they hired Way. Well, I used to do Barbara in a half hour. I'd do her behind her desk, and I'd clip my lights to her curtains, and if I were flying to New York, she'd just turn a little bit the curtains, and no mirror, no nothing, I'd do her. And she didn't want to sit that long. Well, Way Bandy did her, and it took him 2 hours to do her. And I get a call from the producer saying, Barbara loved the way Way did Barbara's makeup today. I'm going to send you a tape of this, and Barbara would like you to look at it and maybe try and copy what Way did. And so I looked at it. And it wasn't the way I would do her because he did her very fashion. And Barbara never wanted to be a fashion. She wasn't a movie, quote, what she said, a movie star. She's a TV personality and make her up as such. And that's what I used to do. So I said, okay, I'll try and emulate Way, but I'll do a Tommy Cole makeup, not a Way Bandy makeup. So I did her, and this was for, I forget, there was a movie star. We were doing a special show on him. And the producer came to me after I did the show and said, Barbara, love the way you did her today. You're going to be with us forever. I never heard from them again. Never saw Barbara again except when I was doing Delta Burke at her house. Barbara was doing a celebrity interview. So, little showbiz story. If you're sensitive, it would kill somebody, but I'm not that sensitive anymore. I'm sort of resilient when it comes to those kind of things happening to you. But that's sort of a little showbiz story that happened to me, where it could be a little devastating if you don't have a strong backbone, but thank goodness I'm not that sensitive anymore. I'm sort of resilient to things that happen in the business.
What was it like working with Barbara Walters?
Oh, Barbara's great. Barbara was great to work with. I mean, I was fascinated by her, number one. And she was very nice to me. We adopted both our kids. So she was very supportive of that with us. So I think her daughter is adopted. I think. I'm not sure on that, but she was very supportive of us as a family. So Barbara was great. I mean, my being fired from Barbara Walters wasn't Barbara's doing; it was the producer's doing, and so I held no grudge. In fact, when I saw Barbara at a Delta Burke shoot, because I was doing Delta from Designing Women after the show was canceled, and Barbara was in the entryway to the house eating lunch, and I came out with Delta, and Barbara jumps up, comes up, gives me a big hug, and introduces me to the whole crew as one of her favorite makeup artists, which, you know, I thought was great. So I never held a grudge toward Barbara at all. She was great to work with. She was fascinating in that she was very careful not to hurt anybody's feelings, but she could be tough as a news person, and I think everybody knew that. But she could be compassionate also. So I loved working with her, and I got to meet such wonderful people. Because I'd fly back for the all-nighter back to New York, and I'd make her up for something that was going on in New York, and I'd do her for all the specials too. And my very first interview that I did with her was John Wayne on his boat just before he died. In fact, he went into the hospital about 3 days later and never came out, and he passed away. So I got to meet John Wayne, which I was great. And
now, would you make up her guests too?
Yes, sometimes. Sometimes the guests would have their own favorites, like I did Paul Newman shoot, where he had his own person that had been with him for films. I'd make I think Jane Fonda I touched up on this. I mean, we did a lot of interviews through those years. So I would sometimes make up the guests.
What were some of your favorites?
My favorite people? Gene Smart.
I'm talking
from Barbara Walters. Boy, it's a tough question because George Burns, I got such a kick out of. In fact, I have a picture of he and I did a commercial with him, and he was just such a neat man. Here he is in his 90s. Then I think it was when we did him. No, maybe he wasn't 90s, and maybe it was 80s. I think it must have been 80s, because in his 80s, gets up every morning and exercises. No, this was his exercise, but he did, and he always had a pretty girl around him. I got just such a kick out of him. He was really kind of neat. There were just a lot of people, and I really can't pick a favorite, but he stands out as one of the favorite interviews that we did. There was a lot of some directors that I had never worked with that I got a chance to meet, which was kind of neat. I just got to be around some very special people that I wouldn't have gotten to be around if it wasn't for Barbara, and she was just very nice. I enjoyed working with her.
Well, that brings up the question. I mean, you're spending a half an hour with her right before a show. Did you see how she would prep for one of these interviews? Was that part of what you would? She
was always busy. She was always on the phone, and that's why I made the mistake, I guess, of the very first time I made her up. A phone call came in, and she said, "Do you mind if I take this while you keep working?" And I said, "Oh, no, that's fine." Well, from then on, every makeup was she's on the phone, and she would have a knack. She would be on the phone like this, and I'd be working on this side of the face, and I'd start to go to this side of the face, and she'd just move the phone, and she'd move here and keep talking, and then I'd work on this side of it. Now, if I was doing her eyes, then I could do this, but if I had to get over here, then she'd just move the phone. I didn't even have to ask her. She knew exactly what was going on, and then the hairstylist would be doing things too while she's on the phone. I mean, we got a lot done, but I had made the mistake of letting her be on the phone the very first time I ever did her, and then from then on, it was. She was on the phone constantly, which was okay. I got the job done.
Yeah, let's stop there and change the